but nothing could have prepared me for the moment I walked into the EQ with a small basket of homemade cookies for my son. I expected to see his familiar smile light up the room, the same smile he had since he was a boy. Instead, I found Michael lying unconscious, surrounded by machines keeping him alive after a massive heart attack. Michael Parker is 42 years old, a hard-working attorney who built his career case by case, always fighting for justice in the courtroom. As his mother, I had always been proud of his determination, even if it meant late nights and constant stress. He has 2 beautiful children, Emily, age 8, and Jacob, age 5. They are the lights of his life. But on that day, neither his children nor his wife were by his side. Michael's wife, Samantha, should have been the first person the nurses called, the one holding his hand through the storm. Instead, she was 3 time zones away, sipping cocktails in Las Vegas, posting filtered photos with another man. While her husband fought for his life, she was flaunting a new dress on Instagram, hashtags full of joy and celebration. I cannot describe the ache that gripped my chest. If you have ever trusted someone to care for the person you love most, only to discover their betrayal at the worst possible time, then you will understand the kind of silence that fell over me in that hospital room. It was not just disappointment, it was a hollow sort of grief. Grief not only for my son's fragile body lying in that bed, but also for the family I thought he had, the loyalty I assumed he could count on. In that moment, I understood something with painful clarity. Life has a cruel way of showing us who truly belongs in our circle. When everything collapses, some people will stand stronger beside you, while others will run in search of brighter lights. That day in the ICU, I knew which one Samantha was. And I also knew I could not let her reckless choices decide the future of my son or his children. In the hours after Michael's heart attack, as I sat by his bedside listening to the steady rhythm of the machines, my mind kept circling back to the moments I should have noticed. The red flags were not sudden, dramatic explosions. They were small, deliberate cuts so quiet you only realize the damage when you are already bleeding. Looking back, it is astonishing how clearly the pattern emerges. At the time, however, I dismissed them, because that is what mothers often do when we want to believe our children are happy. 2 years earlier, Samantha had been polite, even warm, when she first joined the family. She hosted dinners, laughed at our jokes, and made sure Michael seemed well cared for. But slowly, her behavior shifted. It started with little comments disguised as concern. "Helen seems so tired. Maybe it's too much for her to watch the kids every weekend." Or, "I think Helen gets a little forgetful sometimes. Maybe we should make things easier for her." At first, I brushed them off as thoughtless remarks. But over time, these suggestions built a wall between me and my grandchildren. Soon, visits with Emily and Jacob became less frequent. Samantha always had a new excuse: soccer practice, a birthday party, a school event that somehow never involved grandparents. Family dinners turned into hurried phone calls. Where I once had been welcome in their home, I suddenly needed permission. Still, I told myself not to complain. After all, every family goes through busy seasons. I convinced myself it was temporary. The financial signs were there too, though I ignored them. Samantha once called me on a weekday morning, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Helen, darling, we're taking Michael on a little getaway. He's been working so hard, and I think he needs a break. Just in case something happens, can I have your credit card information for emergencies?" I hesitated, but only for a moment. She sounded so caring, so considerate, and I wanted to support Michael's marriage. So I gave her access to my emergency account, the one where I had carefully saved $50,000 for unexpected needs, the children's college fund, or a medical crisis. The irony is not lost on me now that very account meant to protect my family became her spending fund. It is easy, in hindsight, to feel foolish, to ask yourself how you could have been so blind. But many of you listening may understand this: when you love someone deeply, you sometimes ignore the whispers of doubt. You tell yourself that loyalty, trust, and marriage vows mean something. You hope the little inconsistencies are just mistakes, not patterns. And so you look away, convincing yourself everything is fine. I looked away until it was almost too late. Sitting in that cold hospital room, watching my son fight for his life, I realized I had been giving Samantha too much credit for too long. The red flags were never subtle. I had just chosen not to see them. And now, I would not allow myself to make that mistake again. That night, as the machines hummed steadily and Michael lay unconscious, I realized waiting quietly was no longer an option. My son had fought his whole life to build a career, a home, and a future for his children. I was not going to let all of that be drained away by someone who cared more about champagne than her husband's heartbeat. So I did what I never imagined I would have the courage to do. I opened my phone and logged into the banking app Michael had once helped me set up. Technology had never been my strength, but in that moment my hands did not shake. I scrolled through line after line of transactions: luxury hotels, expensive dinners, spa treatments, none of which had anything to do with emergencies. Over $12,000 had been spent in just 3 days, all under the name of family expenses. My emergency account, the one meant for medical bills or college savings, was being drained in real time. The fury that rose in me was like fire in my chest. Protecting my son meant acting now. Within minutes, I froze every account Samantha had access to and downloaded the entire transaction history as proof. But I did not stop there. I called Patricia Gomez, an old friend from my church who had become a private investigator after her own painful divorce. Patricia had a way of finding answers in places most people never thought to look. When I explained the situation, she promised to dig into Samantha's activities immediately. It did not take long for the truth to surface. Patricia confirmed that Samantha was not at a spa retreat for her nerves, as she had claimed. She was checked in at a luxury hotel in Las Vegas with a man named Ryan Cole, a 35-year-old personal trainer and aspiring model who had conveniently become Samantha's new fitness instructor 8 months earlier. While Michael was collapsing at work from exhaustion and stress, Samantha was drinking champagne poolside with Ryan, charging every indulgence to accounts she thought no one would question. The first call from Samantha came less than an hour after I froze the accounts. Her voice was tight, the false sweetness gone. "Helen, something is wrong with the cards. They're all being declined." I could hear the panic underneath her polished tone. For the first time in 2 years, I felt calm. "Oh dear," I said evenly. "That does sound inconvenient. Where did you say you were again?" It was in that moment I realized the balance of power had shifted. For too long, Samantha had dictated the terms of this family. But as I sat beside my son, holding his hand and hearing the steady beep of the monitors, I knew the turning point had come. She could no longer hide behind lies, and I was just getting started. By Saturday morning, the impossible happened. Michael's eyelids fluttered, and for the first time in 2 days, his eyes opened. The relief that surged through me nearly knocked the breath out of my chest. His gaze was groggy, confused, but when it settled on me, I saw recognition and something softer, gratitude. "Mom," he whispered, his voice rough from the breathing tube that had been removed hours earlier. I leaned forward, tears stinging my eyes. "I'm here, sweetheart. You gave us all quite a scare." He tried to sit up, wincing as the monitors beeped. "Where's Samantha?" The question I had been dreading cut through the air like a blade. I hesitated. How do you tell your son, still weak from a heart attack, that his wife had chosen luxury over loyalty? That she was not by his side when he needed her most? "She's traveling," I said carefully. "But I've been here with you." Michael frowned, searching my face as if he already sensed the truth. "Traveling? During all this?" His voice cracked, not only from weakness but from the weight of betrayal. I held his hand tighter, knowing I could not shield him forever. "We'll talk about it when you're stronger," I murmured. But Michael shook his head slowly, determination flickering in his eyes. "I already know, Mom. I've known something was wrong for months." His words stopped me cold. "What do you mean?" I asked. His voice steadied as though he were back in the courtroom, presenting facts to a jury. The secretive phone calls, the sudden obsession with fitness classes, the new clothes. "I hired a private investigator 6 weeks ago. Her name is Sandra Lee. She's also a lawyer. We've been building a case." I stared at him, stunned. While I thought I was uncovering the truth, Michael had already been gathering his own evidence. "You knew about Ryan Cole?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Michael nodded grimly. "Personal trainer, 35, likes expensive watches and even more expensive vacations. They've been seeing each other for 8 months. What I didn't know," he said, his expression hardening, "was that she would actually leave while I was fighting for my life." For a moment, silence filled the room except for the hum of the machines. Then, to my surprise, Michael gave a weak laugh that quickly turned into a cough. "Mom, you magnificent woman. Did you really freeze the accounts?" I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips despite everything. "Every last one of them. She won't be charging another spa treatment to this family ever again." His eyes lit with pride, a glimmer of the strong man I knew. "Good, because now we go on the offensive." I looked at my son, pale and frail in the hospital bed, yet speaking with the steel of a seasoned attorney. He wasn't just surviving, he was preparing for battle. "Call Sandra," he said firmly. "Tell her it's time. Divorce papers, custody, assets, everything. Samantha abandoned me when it mattered most. That is all the evidence we'll ever need." For the first time since walking into that ICU, I believed we might actually come out of this stronger than before. The day Michael decided to move forward with divorce proceedings, everything shifted. His attorney, Sandra Lee, arrived at the hospital carrying a leather briefcase and the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from years of courtroom battles. She spoke with Michael as though he were already back in his office, discussing strategy instead of lying in a hospital bed. "You have the evidence, Michael. Adultery, abandonment during a medical emergency, financial misconduct. Any judge will see through her act." Michael nodded, his face pale but resolute. "I want custody of Emily and Jacob. I can't let Samantha take them away." That evening, Samantha returned home unexpectedly. She must have found a way to borrow money for the flight, because she came storming into the driveway like a thundercloud. I watched from the window as she slammed the car door, her hair unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, her usual composure shattered. She barged into the house without knocking. "Where are my children?" she demanded, her voice sharp with panic. I stepped between her and the staircase, keeping my tone calm. "They're safe, Samantha. Safe with people who actually showed up when they were needed." Her eyes narrowed. "You had no right to interfere with our accounts. That money belongs to me too." I shook my head slowly. "No, that money was Michael's hard-earned income and my emergency savings. You used it to fund vacations with your lover. That ends now." She opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, a small voice came from the stairs. "Mommy." It was Emily, her face pale and confused. Behind her, Jacob clutched his sister's hand, his wide eyes filled with uncertainty. Samantha's tone flipped instantly, becoming syrupy sweet. "Baby, Mommy's home. Come give me a hug." But Emily didn't move. Instead, she asked the question none of us could soften. "Daddy was in the hospital. Why weren't you here?" The silence that followed was heavier than any accusation an adult could give. Samantha stammered, I was traveling, sweetheart. I came as soon as I could." Emily looked at me, then back at her mother. "Grandma took care of Daddy, not you." The truth, spoken from the lips of an 8-year-old, cut deeper than any lawyer's argument. Samantha's face crumpled, but before she could spin another excuse, the front door opened again. Sandra Lee stepped inside, carrying a folder of documents. "Perfect timing," she said coolly. "Mrs. Parker, I was hoping to find you here." Samantha straightened defensively. "You can't keep me from my children. This is my house too." Sandra placed the folder on the table with deliberate calm. "Not anymore. The court has issued a temporary restraining order. You are barred from removing the children from their father's custody. Any visitation will be supervised." Samantha's face went from pale to red with fury. "You can't do this." Sandra met her gaze without flinching. "Actually, we can. Abandonment, adultery, and financial theft leave little room for negotiation." She handed over the papers. "You may read them carefully." "I suggest you do." Emily, still standing on the stairs, whispered, "Mommy, did you really leave when Daddy was sick?" Samantha closed her eyes, tears streaking her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "I made terrible choices." Emily shook her head, her voice quiet but certain. "Then maybe you should go. Daddy needs peace." In that single moment, Samantha lost something greater than money or property. She lost the unquestioning trust of her own children, and there was no court order in the world that could restore it. For a brief moment, I thought the storm was finally passing. Samantha had been confronted, the legal process was moving swiftly, and Michael's recovery was steady. But life has a cruel habit of twisting just when you start to breathe easier. The call came one quiet afternoon while I was in the garden with Emily, showing her how to pinch the dead blooms off the roses. "Mrs. Parker." The voice on the other end was professional, steady. "This is Dr. Wilson from Riverside Memorial. I'm calling about your daughter-in-law, Samantha. She has been admitted following what appears to be a suicide attempt." The pruning shears fell from my hands. My first reaction was disbelief. Samantha, the woman who had caused so much destruction, now lying in a hospital bed herself. But before I could gather my thoughts, the doctor added, "She specifically requested to see you. She claims she has information about threats to your family." My instinct screamed it was another manipulation, but a mother's intuition also warned me not to dismiss it too quickly. An hour later, I found myself walking down the sterile hallway of the psychiatric wing, the air heavy with quiet desperation. Samantha looked nothing like the woman who once strutted into parties in designer heels. She was pale, her hair unkempt, her eyes swollen from crying. When she saw me, her voice was barely a whisper. "Helen, thank you for coming." I stood at a careful distance. "The doctor said you had something important to tell me." She nodded, tears slipping down her face. "Ryan isn't who I thought he was. When the money stopped, when I was stuck in Vegas, he changed. He started talking about other ways to get money from your family." My stomach tightened. "What other ways?" Samantha lowered her gaze. "He's been researching you. Your life insurance, your property, your savings. He said accidents happen all the time, and no one questions them when someone your age passes naturally." A cold shiver ran through me. She went on, her words tumbling out in fragments. "At first I thought it was just anger. But then he showed me documents, insurance policies he forged, papers with your name, your signature copied. He told me he didn't need me alive, that he could still collect even if I wasn't there to play my part." I gripped the arms of the chair beside her bed. "Are you telling me he was planning to kill me? And Michael?" Samantha nodded weakly. "Make it look like an accident, a fall down the stairs, a car crash, leave the children orphaned, and somehow I'd still inherit." It was almost too much to take in. The betrayal of infidelity was one thing, but this was survival. Then she reached into the drawer and handed me her phone. I recorded him, every plan, every threat. 12 hours of conversations. I thought I was keeping souvenirs of our relationship. Instead, I documented a murder plot. For the first time, I believed her. Samantha was guilty of many things, but the fear in her eyes was real. And suddenly, I realized our family was facing a danger far greater than heartbreak. The FBI moved faster than I ever expected. With Samantha's recordings and the forged documents she provided, federal agents had more than enough to act. 3 days later, Ryan Cole was arrested in the parking lot of a motel outside of town. He wasn't there by accident. According to surveillance, he had been watching my house, timing when I came and went, likely preparing the accident that would have set his plan into motion. The thought made me tremble, but it also filled me with gratitude that we had stopped him before he could touch my family. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh explained it plainly as she laid a stack of evidence on Michael's kitchen table. "Ryan has done this before. 3 other states, different women, same pattern: seduce, extract financial information, plan staged accidents for wealthy family members. Your daughter-in-law wasn't his first victim. She's just the first one who turned on him with proof." Michael sat across from her, pale but stronger than he had been days earlier. He shook his head slowly. "So in a twisted way, Samantha's betrayal actually saved us." The agent nodded. "If she hadn't recorded him, we wouldn't have enough to prosecute." Michael sighed, the weight of relief and sorrow mixing in his expression. "What happens to her now?" Agent Walsh folded her hands. "She'll testify. The fraud charges against her will remain, but with her cooperation, the punishment will likely be lighter. She's still responsible for the choices she made, but she may help prevent Ryan from destroying other families." I studied Samantha's recordings later that night. Hearing Ryan's casual tone as he discussed accidents for me and my son chilled me to the bone. Yet it was undeniable Samantha had handed us the key to ending his schemes. Meanwhile, Sandra Lee worked swiftly to secure Michael's divorce. Adultery, abandonment, financial theft, and now conspiracy by association. No judge could overlook that mountain of evidence. Temporary custody became permanent, and Samantha's visits with Emily and Jacob would be supervised by court order. The children, blissfully unaware of the darkest details, only knew their father was safe at home and their grandmother was always nearby. That was enough for now. The morning Ryan was officially charged, I walked into Michael's kitchen and found him sipping tea, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I feel free, Mom," he said. "For the first time in years, I feel truly free." I squeezed his hand, meeting his eyes. "You fought in courtrooms for so many clients, Michael. This time you fought for yourself and you won." Justice had arrived, not through revenge alone, but through truth, persistence, and the courage to face the ugliest betrayal head-on. 2 weeks later, life began to resemble something close to normal again. Michael was recovering at home, slowly regaining his strength. Emily and Jacob settled back into their routines, running through the house with laughter that felt like a balm after so many tense, silent days. I often found myself sitting on the porch in the evenings, just listening to those sounds: children's giggles, the hum of neighbors mowing their lawns, the faint music from a passing car, ordinary noises that had almost been stolen from us. Samantha's story wasn't over. She remained in treatment and under legal supervision. Though her choices had hurt Michael deeply, she was also the reason Ryan's plot came to light. That contradiction was hard to live with. How do you reconcile the woman who betrayed your son's marriage with the woman who provided the evidence that saved his life? The truth is, sometimes people can be both villains and unlikely allies. And sometimes forgiveness and trust are two very different things. I could not forgive everything Samantha had done, but I could acknowledge that in the end, she chose to reveal the truth. One evening, Emily climbed onto my lap while I was knitting. "Grandma," she asked softly, "is Mommy bad?" Her wide eyes searched my face, hungry for honesty. I took a deep breath. "Sweetheart, Mommy made mistakes. Big mistakes. But making bad choices doesn't always mean someone is bad forever. What matters now is that you and Jacob know you are loved and safe. Daddy will always be here for you. And so will I." She nodded slowly, as if weighing those words carefully before resting her head on my shoulder. Children understand more than we give them credit for. They feel the truth, even when they can't fully explain it. As for me, I learned a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my days. Betrayal hurts most when it comes from inside the circle of trust. But pain doesn't have to break us, it can sharpen our resolve. By freezing those accounts, by refusing to stay silent, I protected my son and my grandchildren. That is what family is meant to do. And maybe that's what true revenge really is, not vengeance that seeks to destroy, but strength that refuses to be destroyed. To anyone listening, take this from me. Never ignore the red flags. Never be afraid to step in when someone you love is at risk. And never underestimate the power of a mother, a father, or a grandparent determined to protect their family. Sometimes the quiet heroes are the ones sitting in hospital chairs or kitchen tables, making the hard choices nobody sees. If this story touched your heart, I'd love for you to share it. Click like, leave a comment with your own experience, and subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. Because your voice matters, and together we remind the world that love, truth, and